good. So to begin here today, we have a very well-deserved presentation of Employee of the Month. Rose, would you please come and tell us all about our month's employee, or Employee of the Month?
I will. This month, Commissioners, our Employee of the Month is actually my assistant, Kelly Payne. And Kelly's been with us for about 1.5 years now. She's brought a lot of joy to the office. She's got a great sense of humor. You know, she's fun to be around, and she is awesome with employees. I mean, she really, and I truly appreciate all the work that she does. She's taken things, and the first time she came to me and asked, can I do something, you know, do this different? It was like, oh, got to get out of the box. The Arbinger training, you know, I had to take a step back, but I really appreciate it. She's brought fresh eyes. You know, she's got a good grasp on what needs to be done. She goes out of her way to help any employee at any time, and I very, very much appreciate what she does, and I think she has a good future with Carbon County, so I personally would like to thank her.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
And just so you know, it is her birthday month too, and she always excited about her birthday. So
Yes. Birthday month and Employee of the Month.
Wow.
Made out.
Kelly Palooza, right?
November's my month, so
Very
sorry.
good. You know, along the lines of what Rose mentioned, I've always been told that with new faces brings new opportunities. And I think we're all glad that Kelly's here with you, Rose, and that she's helping you take good care of all the county in our human resources or personnel department. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Item number 2 on the agenda, we have approval of minutes. And, you know, Lori Perez always does such an amazing job of putting all these minutes together. No matter how fast or slow or tediously we speak during the meetings. One item that I would just point out in bullet point 3 or whatever, it talks about the budget concerns and the use of the road by Carbon County residents. I think it would be budget concerns and the lack of use of the road by Carbon County residents. So because Emma Road's not being used by Carbon County residents, it doesn't make sense for us to use our tax dollars to really maintain and keep it up going. So just that one clarifying point. Commissioners, did you have any other items on the minutes that you wanted to discuss?
I didn't. I'll make a motion to approve with the amendment.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Lori. Item 4 on the agenda, we have the opening of sealed bids for 2 new half-ton
You
trucks.
skipped one, Commissioner.
Oh, I apologize. Got ahead of myself there. I went from bullet point 3 of the old minutes, and I just jumped right over 4 on our current agenda, or number 3. So number 3 is the appointment of vacancies on county boards and consideration and possible approval of Resolution 2018-16 with names of persons appointed to board. Commissioners, we have several boards and several applicants. I would highly recommend that we go through each board individually and make our motions that way. First board to consider, we have the Career Service Board with 2 vacancies and 1 applicant.
I'll make a do you want to read all the names in as we go? I'll make a motion to approve Edward Sandoval. He's the only one there.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve Edward Sandoval for the Career Service Board. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And we'll have to re-advertise for that remaining seat, Jeannie, if we'll get that out.
And the weed board also.
And the Weed Board. The Housing Authority Board, we have 1 vacancy and 4 applicants. Applicants are Kent Boyack, Deborah Madrigal, Jeannie Wilson, and Beverly Voitinik.
Commissioners, I'd make a motion that we appoint Jeannie Wilson to serve on the Housing Authority.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for Jeannie Wilson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any further discussion? Motion carries. On the Planning Commission, we have 2 vacancies and 2 applicants. The applicants are Paul Anderson and Kurt McFarland.
I'll make a motion to approve Paul Anderson and Kirk McFarland.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll just point out that Kurt McFarland has been serving as an alternate, so he's already well-versed and experienced there. So he'll be a great addition to the full board.
So will we need to put out an application for an alternate if he's moving from a alternate to a
We will need to do that.
board?
Yeah.
So will you put that on the advertise for that, please? Thank you.
And it's very beneficial to have an alternate for that board so that we can complete a quorum even if it's not the original set of members. We have the Special Service District, which is known as the Recreation Transportation Special Service District. And on this, we have 2 vacancies, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 applicants. I'll read through them. We have Richard Lee, we have Craig Christensen, we have John Daniels, Ann Anderson, Jesse McCourt, Brent Barker, and David Petty. And I would just throw out that all 7 of these individuals seem to be very qualified individuals, and I feel fortunate that there is so much interest in this board. Commissioners, do you have any recommendations?
You know, I would go ahead and make a motion that we appoint Brent Barker and David Petty as the 2 individuals to serve.
We have a motion. Do we have a counter motion or a substitute motion?
I would agree with those. I'll second that motion, and I want to echo what you had said earlier, that all 7 applicants were very good applicants.
We do have a motion, and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any further discussion? I would just concur again with what has already been said, that Brent Barker and David Petty are great candidates, as well as the other 5. And we look forward to the board with its new makeup going forward. Now we have another special service district that is specific just to Schofield and their sewer and their other special needs, water hookups and such. And this board, we have 2 vacancies and 2 applicants. First applicant is Albert Spensko, and the second applicant is Pace Hansen.
Boy, I'll take another hard one where the number of applicants equal the number of positions open. I'll make a motion to appoint Albert Spensko and Pace Hansen.
Motion made. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. You know, sometimes we've had this meeting and we've had a lot of empty positions and very few board applicants. So this has worked out very well this year coming around. On the Sheriff's Merit Board, we have 2 vacancies and 3 applicants. We have Jason Marshall as an applicant, Ann Anderson as an applicant, and John Daniels. Commissioners, do we have a...
Commissioners, I will make a motion to appoint Jason Marshall and Ann Anderson to the Sheriff's Merit Board.
Okay,
I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any further discussion? I would point out that Jason Marshall has some history and some experience that will lend well to the Sheriff's Merit Board, as well as Ann, a member. I believe that John Daniels would have also been a qualified candidate. It's good to have good options to choose from. The next board, and perhaps we have more applicants for this board than any other board. It is wonderful that we have so much interest. Water is perhaps one of those items that is of dire need in a desert, in our community specifically, and the state legislature, with their upcoming surplus, as they decide how and what are the best uses of that surplus. During our annual convention of commissioners, they mentioned that one of the items perhaps that will be given most attention this next legislative session will be water infrastructure. So the Water Conservancy District, I would say, would be really important to make sure that we choose wisely who will fulfill those seats in those positions. Right now, we have 2 vacancies, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 applicants. However, the vacancies must be fulfilled through specific geographic jurisdictions. So this one we need to look at in 2 ways. We can't just appoint 2 applicants. We must say for jurisdiction number 2 and for jurisdiction number 3.
And they're actually called divisions.
Division.
Within
Thank you.
the formation documents. And so they have to be residents within the division for which they're being appointed to represent.
And our Commission Secretary, Jeannie, has gone through the thorough process of validating that each of these individuals live within the division that they're applying for. And for division number 2, we have 4 applicants. One being Richard Lee, the next being Keith Cox, the third being Kenneth Snook, and the fourth being Gary Harwood. So I would entertain a motion for that specific seat in that division, known as Division 2.
For
Commission-
division, what's that?
Division 2?
Division 2, with Gary Harwood, Kenneth Snook, Keith Cox, and Richard Lee.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Keith Cox to Division 2.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any further discussion? I think that many of these individuals offer different qualifications, and all of them are very qualified in one way or another, even if their strengths differ. For the next division or seat that is available, we have division number 3, and the candidates for that are John Richens, Craig Christensen, Scott Young, Brent Barker, and Keith Grogan.
I'll make a motion to appoint John Richens.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for John Richens. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And again, I would add that even though the qualifications are rather vastly different amongst these individuals, all of them seemed very qualified. And I would add, especially with John Richens' resume and his extensive experience with water treatment, that is of unique importance. And so, congratulations, John. That covers the vacancies in the Water Conservancy District. Next, moving on to the Board of Health. In the Board of Health, we have 2 applicants and 1 vacancy. We have Ann Anderson and Debbie Pete.
Knowing and understanding that Debbie Pete is the national president,
She
Or
sits as the chair.
the chair of the National Association of
Health
Health
Departments.
Departments, I think it would be wise to appoint her as the board appointee. So my recommendation is Debbie Pete.
We have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I would just add and clarify that I don't believe anyone from Carbon County has ever served on the public health for even the state of Utah. And Debbie Pete is the past chair of the state of Utah, and let alone anyone served at the national level. So we have quite I would call her humble, but local celebrity at the same time. And it's very fortunate that we can have her participate at the local level and bring to us those best practices from across the nation. We have one more board to consider, and that is the Board of Tourism, of which we have 1 vacancy that was advertised and 1 applicant. Commissioners, the 1 applicant is Jeffrey Nielsen.
Make a motion to appoint Jeffrey Nielsen.
I'll second that. He fits into the category of someone from the industry.
Very good. Now, where he fits into the category of someone from industry, have we then freed up a position, or would we need a second person from industry to free up another seat for that board?
We'll need to look at that and address it and see if we can appoint one other one in the future.
Okay. Jeannie, would you look at what the requirements are? I believe there was like a 2-to-1 or some type of ratio, so many from industry and then someone representing the community type of formula.
I don't think it's 2-to-1. I think it's just a majority.
A
Majority
majority.
of the board members have to either be in the hotel or restaurant business. And so as long as the majority of them are hotel or restaurant, then you can have a minority that are in related industries,
Okay.
tourism industries.
And we'll take that up with Tina and make sure that we meet those requirements.
Very good. Well, Commissioners, that was item number 3 on the agenda. Any further discussion? We have a few boards that weren't filled, but for the majority of it, we had a lot of interest in boards and filling those vacancies this year. So I appreciate all those in the community who helped spread awareness and to help candidates come forward. Item number 4 on the agenda. We are now to the point of opening sealed bids for 2 new half-ton trucks for the Sheriff's Office. Seth, can you give us a little more information there?
We received one bid. It's from Auto Farm Price Auto Group. The bid is for an F-150. It's $39,700. And then a second one. These are both 2018 F-150s. The second one is for $34,879.
Commissioners, how would you like to handle this bid? Would you like to turn it over for the sheriff's review, but do you want it to come back for decision? Do you want him to be able to make that decision?
I'll make a motion that we acknowledge the bids, turn over to the sheriff for review and award.
We have a motion
I'll second that.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One thing to note, the difference in the value of these 2 vehicles is the one vehicle will go to the sheriff's office, the other vehicle will go to emergency management, and Justin Needle's vehicle. That Justin Needle's vehicle will then go back to the sheriff's office and have lights and sirens put on and be a patrol vehicle.
Well, and there's also to note, there's nothing that says that they have to accept these bids. They can review them and decide to award, or we can go out for bid again.
Right.
Item number 5, consideration and possible approval of 3rd amendment to radio site lease agreement with InHelper with New Singular Wireless PC LLC.
Commissioners, if you remember, I believe it was AT&T before, but now the entity is called New Singular Wireless. They offered several options on how to renew this contract, and I believe you instructed Barry to go back to them and inform them that you wish them to continue to do a pay-by-month amount. This is for a term of a new initial term of 3 years commencing December 1st of 2018 with separate additional extensions of up to 5 years each that you can add on to this. It provides that the rent that'll be paid is $1,001 a month. It will increase by 15% each term. And the copy you have in front of you is correct, except that they sent Barry a more updated copy that pulls out Section 3. Section 3 said they could expand their use at the site, and in fact, Barry caught that he looked at that and decided, no, we don't want to allow an expansion of use without, at this time, without a separate agreement. So there is no provision that allows them to naturally expand. But as I look back at what we had talked about, this was the agreement that we wanted with them, and they've sent it. I don't have any problems or concerns with it. I don't know if Barry had anything he wanted to say, but I'm fine with it. It meets what we had asked for, and so if you want to go ahead and approve it, I don't see any reason not to.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the contract for the radio site with New Singular Wireless.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 6, consideration of resolution number 508, authorizing and approving an interlocal cooperation agreement providing for the creation and organization of the Central Utah Throughput Infrastructure Agency, also known as CUTIA, and related matters. Christian, would you kind of go over those for us?
Sure. Maybe Commissioner Potter could introduce the matter, and then there are a couple of things I want to specifically make sure are covered, but I think Commissioner Potter knows the details probably better than anyone, and
Can you provide a...
he could introduce that, I think.
Thank you. This resolution would allow 4 counties to organize into the Central Utah Throughput Infrastructure Agency, being Carbon, Emery, Sevier, and Sanpete, for the purpose of one project only, and that would be participation in the Oakland Bulk Terminal in Oakland, California. And so as we have met as counties and have also met with legal counsel, this would allow the group to move forward so that the documents could go to Lieutenant Governor's office for approval, and then we would be organized in a position where we could go forward with an application to the Throughput Infrastructure Fund, which those monies were set aside in a legislative bill a few years ago. And of course there would be not only the application but a list of due diligence that would have to be performed prior to any monies being spent.
And so, Commissioners, what you're asked to do is approve a resolution which, in fact, forms the interlocal entity, a Utah interlocal entity under Utah law. And so if you approve the resolution, it also, by its nature, will be approving the creation of this interlocal entity. And I just want to cover a couple of things. I want you to make sure that you're aware that the entity is a separate legal entity. It's not a subordinate entity to the county. It's not an adjunct of the county. It's a separate legal entity. And the purpose of it, as Commissioner Potter said, is to act as a throughput, is to facilitate a throughput infrastructure project under the provisions of Senate Bill 246, enacted during the 2016 general session of the Utah Legislature. The project will be financed by a loan, grant, or a combination of a loan and grant from the Permanent Community Impact Fund Board, from the Throughput Infrastructure Fund established by Senate Bill 246. And the repayment obligations of the agency under any loan will be evidenced by bonds, notes, or other obligations of the agency. Now, as provided in Senate Bill 246 and the interlocal agreement, any bonds issued by the agency would be payable solely from the revenues from the project received by the agency, and the bonds and the contractual obligations of the agency shall not be a debt or obligation of any of the counties, and the counties shall have no responsibility or liability for the payment of the bonds or any such contractual obligations. The resolution and the interlocal agreement provide that the agency will be governed by a 4-person board of directors, with each of the counties appointing 1 director and an alternate director. So along with your approval of the resolution, should you decide to do that, you would also need to include in that motion a recommendation of somebody to serve as a director from Carbon County and somebody to serve as an alternate director. The director would have full authority to act as the representative of the county on the board. And should be noted that the director is not required to be an elected official. Director is not required to be an employee of the county. Simply needs to be a citizen in the county and reside here.
When you say director, is this director of the board or just a member of the board?
Just a member of the board of directors.
So all 4 members, all 4 counties are all known as directors?
All 4, yes, all 4 representatives from each county is a
With their
is a
respective
director.
alternate.
Correct.
I think one of the things to really highlight there is that the counties are not at risk for this loan and this
Correct.
potential repayback or any of that stuff.
That's right. This is a completely separate entity, and it will be financed through the project or any loans that are going to be loans or bonds that might be secured through the project.
And Commissioner Potter, this entity and help me if I speak incorrectly in any way, but that this entity helps the whole state of Utah secure its contractual throughput capacity of commodities.
Bulk, yeah, bulk
Yep.
terminal. product.
Bulk commodities, that's true. And going back to your first point, in the legislation, it was put that this would be a loan, or excuse me, a grant. And of course, any applications, that particular fund is administered by the Community Impact Board. And so there would be an application go. They are the administrative side of it, even though the money is set aside and held in a different fund, state monies outside of the CIB. And then you are correct in the fact that as it goes forward, those opportunities, what the state of Utah gains is a commitment for 50% of the port capacity for about a quarter, or less than a quarter of the construction costs of the facility. So it's a 10 million metric ton port, and the operator would have a 66-year lease and would be committed to putting Utah coal through that, along with other products through Utah first, and then if there was capacity in the port, then other products could go through that, both the white and the dark type products. Separated, domed, state-of-the-art facility, and it would be a nice way to have a return and pay those grant monies back, and have a return for the counties.
I just wanted to highlight one thing that you mentioned there. We've secured 54% of the port capacity for less than 25% of the funding.
Correct.
So that's just fantastic.
And it's a good thing for state of Utah. I mean, who wouldn't, and a landlocked state, who wouldn't want access to international markets through a port, especially for bulk commodities?
And it's something that Carbon County, among the other three, has done for the state of Utah. You know, so nobody can really say that us smaller or less populated counties can't make a big difference for all of the state of Utah.
That's correct. Anyway, it would be an exceptional opportunity, and again, there would have to be other hearings, other applications, other public hearings as far as those applications go. But it would bind us. I know that San Pete has approved theirs. Emory is meeting tonight, and Severe's, I believe, is next week. So after that, we can submit the documentation to the Lieutenant Governor's office.
Very good. And as far as our local director, my understanding, Commissioner Potter, is that you would have an interest, even as you were leaving the commission, in being involved with this project.
If the commission so decided, with the new commission coming in, I would be happy to bring that institutional knowledge and the work from the ground up with that. But having said that, I think it would be most appropriate to appoint Commissioner Hopes as the director. And then if either of you would like to appoint me as the alternate, I'd be happy to do that, which then could be changed by the new commission in January if they so desired. But I am committed to help see this through. I might also mention before we get into that there's been some wrong press, some bad press in the Salt Lake papers, and particularly coming out of Oakland in regards to the Bay Express. And that is that the permit for the bulk terminal had been pulled because of lack of progress on the California developer's part. While they may have taken that step, the issue is that they've had us tied up in court for 2 years. And how do you bring a developer to the project to develop it when there is uncertainty? The federal judge has ruled in favor of the developer, in favor of the ban, that the Oakland could not ban the handling of coal. And so we are proceeding to go forward because this again looks like it is illegal, and it is again missteps and misinformation that the city of Oakland is trying to take steps. I think their big concern, to be honest with you, is they don't want to handle coal. And they've now been told on a federal level they cannot do that. So I think it's a last-ditch attempt on their part. I hope that we can proceed and move forward with it. So we're going to act like we are and make a difference in the economy.
Well, and it's, you know, we may not have the awareness capability as, you know, the Salt Lake Tribune or any of the other newspapers, but it's good that we're here and we can put out the right information. With all that being said, unless there's somebody from industry that would have more knowledge and understanding and capability, I wouldn't see anything any reason not to include you going forward. And so as the chair, I will go ahead and step down as chair so that I can make a motion to appoint Commissioner Hopes as the director and yourself, Commissioner Potter, as the alternate. And then, of course, future commission can change that if they see the need. But that is my motion.
I'll second that. We also need to approve the resolution.
Yes. Do we need to do that in one motion, or does it need to be separate?
You can do that in one motion, I think.
Okay. Well, then I will amend my motion to include what was said, but also approving of resolution number 508, authorizing the interlocal cooperation agreement, providing for the creation and organization of the Central Utah Throughput Infrastructure Agency, as well as the director and alternate director.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 7. Consideration and possible approval of engagement letter with Chapman and Cutler LLP to act as special counsel to the counties and to act as bond counsel to CUTIA, which is the cooperation or the Central Utah Throughput Infrastructure Agency that we just approved. And from my understanding, Chapman and Cutler have been the legal counsel in helping form this entity through the entire process over the last couple of years.
That's correct, including the writing of the legislation for Senate Bill 246. So they have been very, very helpful. We are working directly with Jim Burr, who is putting the documents and so forth together so that we'll be fully vetted with the state, and then he will also help us in the application process, and again, making sure that we do everything according to statute and law.
And Jay, I think when we spoke with him on that conference call recently, he told us he's been putting together interlocal agreements since, for how many years? Was it the 70s, he said?
Yeah.
The late 70s? So there's probably no better attorney, no more experienced attorney with respect to interlocal agreements than Mr. Burr. So we're well represented by him. All the counties are in this effort.
He brings a wealth of information, particularly from a financial side of it, not only through the bonds, but his firm specializes in large financial transactions.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve an engagement letter with Chapman and Cutler to act as the special counsel for CUTIA.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item number 8, consideration and possible approval of a lease renewal with the Boys and Girls Club.
Commissioners, this is just recently I had a conversation with the director of the Boys and Club of Salt Lake, of the Greater Salt Lake is what it's called. And they're interested in renewing their lease opportunity at the old senior center. They are working on some grant opportunities to do some remodeling, some renovation. But this is just the first step to keep them in the building. And unless anybody has questions, I think this is the same lease agreement as last time.
It is. Commissioners, I haven't given you these changes. I've made a couple changes, the extent of which are only to refer to the building by its address. So I've inserted its address in several places. In the previous draft, we called it the old Carbon County Rec Building, but I think enough time's passed now that we ought to just refer to it by its own address. And I indicated, I said in there that notice of any event or any change that they want to make happen to the building would have to go through Carbon Rec, because I think they were sharing some space at that time. I don't know if Carbon Rec is still using it for storage, but I've modified it to say that if they're going to make an improvement or if they want to hold some kind of event there, special event there, they need to seek approval from the county commission as well. And so just kind of little housekeeping to reflect the change in time. And as Casey said, they are now the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Salt Lake and not the Boys and Girls Club of Carbon County.
With those minor adjustments, Commissioners, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with those adjustments.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second on the approval of the lease renewal with the Boys and Girls Club of the Greater Salt Lake. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Consideration, item number 9, consideration and possible approval of a memorandum of understanding with Data East LLC to host GIS data from Carbon County.
Commissioners, Barry has details on this, but this would allow our GIS information to be put onto an app that can be used by visitors to the county. My only concern with the agreement was that it asked us to hold harmless Data East and to indemnify them if there were ever a claim that they were using information that was not Carbon County's, because I do think they're getting their information just from us, but because we don't control everything that they do, it's possible that they might mistakenly have some information over which we don't have control. And so my only concern was I don't think we ought to agree to indemnify them or hold them harmless if they're sued by a third party. But otherwise I see no problem with us letting them have that data and use it for their app. I just think it's going too far to indemnify them. I think if they want to use it, fine, but they ought to do so really at their own risk. We can indicate, we do indicate that that we believe it to be, the data is our own. Barry has verified that it is, but on the other hand, if things change or if they use some data that somehow they got from somebody other than us, I don't think we ought to be indemnifying them. So we've passed on that requested change to them. We would ask that if you're okay with that, that you approve it subject to that change, and then let's see if they agree to it, we can just sign it and execute it.
Yeah.
So go ahead, I'm sorry,
I
Commissioner.
was just going to mention that I really appreciate that advice, especially seeing that they're headquartered in another country. So if somebody else were to pursue them, I don't think we'd want to stand in the way and hold them harmless. So I just concur with what you said. Commissioner Potter, did you have something else?
I was just going to ask Christian, and those changes would be one in paragraph 2 and then paragraph 3 in general.
And then paragraph 3 comes out altogether.
Okay.
Basically, it's just gone altogether. In paragraph 2, rather than saying we warrant that it's our data, we say to the best of our knowledge it's our data.
Because we don't want to be responsible to any third party, and it does tie us there also.
Right.
Okay.
So Commissioners, subject to those changes, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve that memorandum of understanding with Data East, subject to those 2 changes taking place.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Barry, any further discussion? No? Commissioners? We're all good? All right, moving on. Motion carries. Item 10, consideration and possible approval of an agreement to convey Carbon County property bordering the Sitla Office Park in exchange for a perpetual easement upon Sitla property for flood control purposes in conjunction with the EWP project. Commissioner Hopes.
Commissioners, we're looking for approval to continue the negotiations with Sitla. We are doing an emergency watershed protection project behind Westwood. In the last round of flooding that we had, there were many homes that were affected by the canal being overtopped. The plan is to create a series of diversions that would slow down the water that would reach the canal and allow the canal to be dumped before that. In order to do that, because all the property that these diversions or these structures would be built are on Sitla property, there's an opportunity for us, instead of buying that property, we have this strip of property, as you can see on your maps, hashed in yellow. It's just less than an acre. We would convey to the to Sitla to be able to have a right of way onto their property. This is something that they've been seeking from us for a little while now, but haven't wanted to purchase that. This allows us to build our structures, allows them to finish their project as well. If you're okay with that, we'll continue to seek agreement. We don't have an agreement yet.
No, we don't have an agreement. The issue with this one is we have some deadlines imposed on us by the NRCS. We have to get the work done by the end of January, and it's possible documents will not be finalized and exchanged on this project till maybe even the middle of next month. And so we wanted your approval as to the concept so that we can go ahead with the EWP project, and then we'll bring those documents to you for approval or ratification. But because no money's going to be changing hands, and it's more or less a straight exchange of property for an easement, I think you can approve this, and that way we can proceed without further problems from as far as the EWP project goes, without further delays.
I do like the idea of maintaining that 15 feet from the asphalt, just for our own purposes or easements that we might need to put through there. But this really does open up that parcel out by the fairgrounds for the development. Sitla would really like to sell lots there that would be not homes, but would be commercial in nature. And so it could be a nice addition to that particular area. But they really do have to have either an easement from us or be owners of the property in order to get really good access into that area.
And commissioners, as I look at the county code, it says if the county desires to sell what's called a piece of property of significant value, meaning it's worth over $100,000, then we have to do a public notice and a public hearing before we do that. Speaking with Curtis Page, and he's done some research. He believes the property is well below that value, that it's not a $100,000 property. And so we felt like, given that's the case, you then may by motion simply dispose of the property as you desire. So this satisfies both the state code and our county procurement code provisions because of the fact that it's not a significant piece of property value-wise.
So I just have one question in regards to what's highlighted in yellow and red. I mean, why doesn't it extend farther to the right where it naturally curves into the other property?
I have no idea.
It just seems like that would be the completion of that frontage. Anyway.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look on the plat. Maybe that's already owned by them. I don't know.
All right. Well,
So
either
that's something we'll look into as we negotiate.
with the concept in mind, I think we can still approve this process going forward. Any further discussion or any questions before we entertain a motion? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
So Christian, the motion, does it need to be for approval to?
Just approval of the concept, approval of the, you need to make a motion to approve the exchange of property or the granting, the conveyance, a motion to approve the conveyance of property in exchange for perpetual easements. And I think that's sufficient.
Okay.
Just to approve the exchange in general is all I'm looking for.
So moved.
We have a motion?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Christian.
Motion carries. Commissioners, seeing that our next item on the agenda is in regards to a public hearing that cannot start until 6 o'clock based on how we advertised it. Unless there's any further business to speak to prior, I'll entertain a recess.
Commissioners, before we go on, we go back and look at 6. We've got this a resolution with ordinance number.
Oh, so that really should not be resolution 508. It should be 2018-17, I believe.
2018.
That's a great catch. Good point.
So we need to officially change that motion to include that.
I'll make a motion to amend that previous motion on item number 6 to change it from resolution number 508 to resolution number 2018-17.
And Commissioner,
Ordinance.
along with that motion, I wonder if you ought to include in that motion that you also approve the terms of the interlocal agreement. I know the resolution approves the formation of the resolution of the interlocal agreement generally, but I think we ought to maybe approve the terms of the interlocal agreement specifically and include that in the motion as well.
And I probably ought to do that since you're involved in that. So I'll step down as the chair, and I'll provide a substitute motion to amend what was previously passed. As a substitute motion, pass those items within the interlocal agreement as discussed, as well as the resolution number, was it 2018-17? Approving an interlocal cooperation agreement for the creation and organization of the Central Utah Throughput Infrastructure Agency, known as CUTIA, and all other related matters, including that of the director, Casey Hopes, and the alternate director, Jay Potter.
And that includes the specific terms of the interlocal agreement, correct?
Okay. I'll second that.
Motion made, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Motion to recess until 6 o'clock.
We have
Second that.
motion second. All in favor? We are recessed.